Welcome to the ripple effect of love for dads and families. Today, in episode 49, we talk about release and recharge. What does that mean for you? And I also have a special guest that will be here in a few seconds. So, are you feeling stuck or stressed? Today's session focuses on checking in with yourself and using Snap, Tap, and Zap to let go of resistance that shows up. Because when we want to bring about change, when we want to shift, our brain brings resistance. Also, looking at recharging your energy and realigning with your joyful, playful side. So, I'm Christine Bernat, stress management coach. And without further ado, here is my special guest, Byron Garcia. Let me just find the button. Here we go. Welcome, Byron. Masters in Biomimicry. Now, I have never heard of that, so I will let you, I know you've explained it to me. I'll let you explain a little more, and you will be sharing the awe of nature and how to recharge. So that's really cool. So, welcome, Byron.
Yeah, thanks for that, Christine. It's really great to be here and talk about a little bit about biomimicry and how that can help us find a way to recharge in nature and in different ways that we can connect with it. Really briefly, what biomimicry is making some sort of observation in nature and then applying that to a human design challenge. So, for example, if you're looking at Shinkansen trains or bullet trains in Japan, one of the engineers on that project, when they were trying to figure out the sonic boom issue when they were going through the tunnels in residential areas, they were on a birding walk and they were an amateur birder. So that's kind of how that happened. And he noticed how the kingfisher would go through the air and into the water and do it seamlessly. And so they had thought about that for a little while and had a bit of an epiphany and said, oh, what if we apply that to the nose shape of the train and see how that impacts the sonic booms that are being caused going through the tunnels. And so when they did that, it actually fixed that issue. And then unbeknownst to them, that it also fixed several other issues that they didn't think were issues maybe at the time, which was how much energy was the train using and how fast could it go. And so the train actually went faster and used less energy based upon this nose shape for aerodynamics. So that's one example of how you can look at natural systems or organisms and then say, well, how can I apply this to either my design challenge or help a company with their design challenge?
So that's really, really cool. And I love that you look at nature to find the solutions in science, right? And I find that for emotional well being, we can do the same thing. I've often said to people, sit on a rock, feel the strength of the rock. Nothing's going to blow you over, nothing's going to knock you down because you're the rock. And being able to connect to that, to me, helps me get some inner strength. Of course, I'm using imagination. However, you also use nature, and you're going to tell us how you use it to recharge in the training that you've had. So it's very exciting to have you today here, Byron. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so exciting to be here and share a little bit about my story with nature. A little bit of backstory about how I grew up is my dad and my parents were very outdoorsy and outgoing. So we had a community, well, not a community garden in our backyard, but we had a small garden that we would tend to and produce a fair amount of our own food. And then we would also go hiking all the time. So I found a lot of connection through growing my own food, understanding where food comes from, eating healthy, things like that. That was one way that I found a way to not only de-stress but connect with the land. And then also when you go on hikes, you can spend some time in silent contemplation. Or, when you're younger, you're just kind of running around all over the place, enjoying being outside and getting some energy out, whichever, really strikes you at the time. But when you get older, you really start to notice that, even though you're out there getting your energy out, you're also really able to be in nature and not think about all the hustle and bustle of being in the more connected environment that we're all in.
I love how you say that, to disconnect from that hustle and bustle. And sometimes, I don't know, for me, when I go hiking, the the brain is going, but if I'm really pushing my hike to go uphill, I need to put all my attention on breathing and being present. And that really helps me just be in that moment. So, how do
Exactly.
you see it?
Yeah, it's very similar. So something I've come across more recently that really resonated with me was the idea of Shinrin Yoku, which in Japanese means the forest bathing techniques. So it's all about the art of going out with either yourself or a professional and really just, leaving technology behind. So if you brought your phone with you, you leave it in the car. You don't bring anything that you're going to be looking at like a watch. You try to just make sure that you are in the internal now, is what a old hiking instructor used to call it. So really focusing on being in that environment, whether it's a small park, a gardens that's like a botanical garden kind of space. I like to visit those often because they're large enough. And even though there is still a lot of people there, you can still feel like you're in nature. So sometimes that could be a barrier to some folks, is you might not be near what people might consider true nature, which could be like a wilderness or, a national park. Those are things that people might more idyllically think of as nature, but there's smaller sections that you can find and still find your way to enjoy that forest bathing or being in nature techniques. And so that's the start of it, is really just taking away the technology of your life, not worrying about bills, not worrying about what's coming next, but find yourself in that moment and then spend some time, whether it's an hour, a couple hours, as much time as you can find. Do what feels manageable for you, because obviously you don't want to be stressed about having to fit it into your schedule. So make sure you have plenty of time for it, really be able to immerse yourself in it. So that's a little bit about forest bathing, and that's the very, very brief concept of what it is. And it's pretty straightforward, but it's also just amazing that you can actually get a doctorate in this kind of field and take people on these excursions to help them de-stress and disconnect from the environment and actually like just recharge.
Yeah, because we go all day. We have these to-do lists, and parents, I mean, I was a parent and a teacher, so I was double, lots of kids, lots of responsibilities. But I'm certain, some people listening that run corporations and are CEOs, and they've got lots to do. And to take a moment to breathe and take care of your physical body, but also your emotional and your mental state, because you're just there. And if you're exhausted, you can just sit somewhere quiet under a tree, even in a park. It's still nice.
Exactly.
Go out early before the traffic starts and everybody starts bustling. I have some friends that live in the city, and they love to go out in the morning in a park because it's quiet. They sit against the tree or stand up against the tree and just be there and notice, right? How do you do bathing in nature? Like, what does that look like?
I,
Forest.
I also actually, yeah, I actually also like that you brought up corporations. So one thing that's really interesting is that Biomimicry 3.8, one of the leaders of biomimicry in the world, they actually worked with a company that was created by Racy Anderson, and so they took their CEO and all of the employees that would want to go on this walk, and I like to call them innovation walks now. And so they
Okay.
took them into the forest to figure out how can they create carpet that's more sustainable. And so instead of having to replace a whole carpet because the dye lot is not the same or the pattern isn't the same, all these different issues with carpet,
Yeah.
they created carpet squares that replicated the entropic pattern that's at the forest floor. So when you see all the leaves and the sticks and anything on the ground, that creates a pattern. Even though it's entropic, it's all chaos, it's not
Yeah.
intended, it just kind
Yeah.
of happens. So if you repeat that with a carpet square, you only have to replace the one square, and you can move it into any orientation because it's going to fit with the pattern that exists, because it's designed to be chaotic but also still recognizable as a pattern. So that's something that I think is really important too for people who are in the corporate environment. If you're higher up, there could be an innovation walk where you can actually disconnect a little bit, still think about your solution, but also get that recharge from the experience in the outdoors.
Mm, very cool. And do you do like breathing while you're there, or do you just are you guided to? I don't know. I'm just curious.
It can be a mix of anything, so it depends on what you're really going for. If you're going for more the innovation, you're gonna mix that blend of, are we trying to spend more time in nature or trying to figure out the solution? So you'll definitely set up time where people can have some quiet contemplation, maybe do some meditative breathing, which if you're not familiar with that, every time you take a step, you would then breathe. So you would find a way. If you're not familiar with it, it's a little tricky to start it, but once you get into the motions of breathing by stepping, you are going to get into a pattern, and then that's going to just totally entrance you in where you are. You're not going to be thinking about much more than walking and breathing, and even that's going to become essentially second nature to yourself, because you're just going to be doing it at some point. And then it'll be done, and then you'll have all these thoughts and things that you connected with, and then you can bring that back into the circle. So that's something I practiced before when I was in AmeriCorps.
That's really cool. And there was a question that popped up, but then another idea popped up and I forgot the question. But when I learned a few years ago when I went to France, my cousin said she had taken some training. And when we're hiking in the mountains, you don't want to be like, every breath you'd be like out of out of oxygen. So we take 3 steps for breathing in and 4 steps for breathing out so that you release more of your carbon dioxide. So if you're looking to amp up your cardio, it's an excellent way to do that as well. And teaching your children to do this is really cool because it's something that, when they get to be in college or their first jobs, they will need to know how to regulate their whole system and just disconnect. And how does it feel when you come back from your forest bathing?
You still retain quite a lot of the benefits. So a lot of the research says you essentially get equivalent time in and out. So if you put in a day or an hour or so on, you get at least that much in return. So you still will have residual benefits of being de-stressed for a little while, and then things will catch back up to you. So it's always a good idea to try and spend as much time in nature when you can to get that balance of doing what you need to do for work and then also getting some time in nature to decompress. So yeah, when you get out of it, it really depends on how long you have been doing it for. So if it's only been an hour, depending on your drive and things, it'll impact that a little bit. But in general, you will feel pretty good, at least from my experience. I feel very relaxed and centered, and just looking at nature. You don't even have to necessarily be in it, but just looking at the green of nature or living things moving around or the sounds, it all impacts how we feel in those moments and then afterwards as well.
So it's about using our 5 senses when we're
Exactly.
out doing the forest bathing so that we're connecting from 5 different aspects of our senses. But it has a I believe that if I go walking with a friend just to talk about all the problems happening, and if I go walking with someone who's able to be quiet a little bit, where you can focus on who you are and breathing and observing and hearing and noticing and paying attention, it's such a different experience.
That's exactly right. And if you also take that experience and translate it to a Chinese garden, a lot of times, at least in the past, I don't know about current Chinese gardens, they design them to experience all of your senses as much as possible. So they have a little pond in them. So that way there's going to be fish swimming around. You might hear some splashes, insects moving around, insects making noise like dragonfly wings and all of that. And then you get the imagery of seeing all the different rocks, plants, the water, the ripples, and then the smells, the smell of the water, the smell of plants, all of those things mixing together. And specifically, there was a place in Portland, Oregon that I would spend at least one of my weekend days at. And I would just sit there with the unlimited tea deal they had and just drink tea and then just listen and be in the environment, do a little bit of work, but just find myself centered even in that small space. And it was about the size of a block. So it wasn't a huge space, but you still got a very similar experience to being in nature and finding that centering through all of the sounds, visuals, smells, and everything.
Yeah, I love that. It's so important to activate our senses, our 5 senses when we go in nature, and to pay attention to it, because I believe that we learn to um, be more attuned to ourselves, and being able to listen to your heartbeat while you're having a beautiful cup of tea. Have you ever been able to do that? Now that's something that if you had told me like even 5 years ago, I would have been like, what? But now, because I have this self-awareness and consciousness, it becomes such a different experience to just be present with yourself, and to I don't know. I find nature very nurturing for me.
I agree. I think it's very important to have it as part of your life because it helps define how you respond to any kind of stimuli in your life. In the biomimicry world, we like to think about how everything has an antenna, a response, and a signal. So we're all putting out some kind of signals. We're all receiving information and we're all responding to it. But if you look at how nature does that, it does it in a way where everything kind of moves with each other dynamically. But in our lives as humans, we oftentimes try and make things static, or we try to control things in a way that doesn't make sense. And so that sometimes will cause us stress. So if we can shift out of some of the mindset we have and really follow all of the examples, model, mentor, and measure kind of mentality with what nature does, we can really have that nurturing positive effects in our bodies, not only for stress, but also just for any other kinds of things that might affect our physical and mental health, because it's all connected.
Yeah.
When you start looking at it from a systems perspective, everything is interpersonal, interconnected, and interdependent. So we're all moving in between these places of social, environment, physical. All of these things are interplaying with each other.
And can you share with us what that would look like concretely? Like, some people might be like, okay, Byron's got all this knowledge, but how does that really look concretely if I go out with my children in the forest or, in a little park or I don't know, swamps now have these nice boardwalks that you can go on, and there's so many, or even if you're just going to the city park.
Yeah, so for me, when I was growing up, I think the best way to explain it is I had a mindset for really wanting to be in nature, and I also wanted to be an engineer or someone who designed things. And so being in nature for me really impacted my social capacities because I would always be trying to connect with things in nature, connect with people. So that really connects the environmental and the social aspects for me. And then in addition to that, with trying to create things, I wanted to work with people to find solutions in
Mhm.
the natural world that would apply to some kind of design challenge. Even before I was looking for a job, I was probably like 10 years old, 15 years old, and it was always just being in nature and always thinking about how can I design something? How can I help work with nature instead of working against it? Even though, again, I didn't really think in those exact words, but that was my mindset. And so
Yeah.
those are some of the connections that I made when I was younger that I really thought about more as an adult. And then same for how you connect mental health. Our health is very directly correlated to the color green. When we see green, it affects our mental health, which is because of plants. And when we hear sounds, again, that affects our mental health. So there's just all these connections and research that proves it. And when you look at hospitals that did some research on how a building with windows that looked at greenery or looked at nature would affect people's recovery, they noticed that there was a significant increase in recovery times and just general well-being. So the people who were in these windowed rooms that actually could see nature, they felt happier, they felt better, they needed less pain medication, they recovered quicker. So that helped us with all of the issues that we might be trying to deal with in a hospital, because no one wants to be in a hospital longer than they have to be. And no one's typically happy in one. But, if you have something to look at, like something like a tree or just the outside in general, it vastly affects your outlook on things because you get those feelings and those emotions from just being able to see it.
Well, that's really cool. I'm so excited to have somebody who can explain the science behind what I feel because I'm always like, you just go and you do it and you spend and you breathe and you release. And I actually love to do the snap tap zap in nature because sometimes when I start my walk, I can feel, because nature is so calm, I can feel the weight of what I'm carrying. So I just snap, tap as I breathe in, relax my shoulders, and exhale that onto the spiraling train that brings it into the magma. Or if it's a thought that's just running around like a crazy hamster, some people say the monkey, the crazy hamster, whatever, I'll make a C shape around my ears while I'm walking. And it's okay if people see me because they'll know I'm doing something that's good for me. If they don't, it's okay. I might wait till they go by. It gives me a weird look, but and then you can exhale that onto the a hot air balloon and see it burning, because when you have to pull the cord to get the fire burning for your hot air balloon to go up. So it's seeing the fire burn that, and then You can be so much more at peace, and it's breathing in to your heart that peace that you hear. The If you can get away far enough from the cars, because even in nature sometimes, national park here, there's a road that goes by, so at the first 5 kilometers we're near the road, but then finally after we're away and we don't hear the road. But it's okay. Tune in to the rest of everything that brings you joy. And I find sometimes people may not be aware, but I've seen so many little kids running up the mountain and the parents trying to keep up. Sometimes we think, oh, our child is too young to go hiking. I know I used to think that, and I don't know why I thought that, because I look at these young families going up the mountain and they're doing an amazing job, these kiddos, some 3, 4 year olds. And you don't have to do the whole mountain. You can just do a section, pause, bring a picnic, enjoy your time in nature with your family. And I believe that you will see much calmer kids. And if you have hyperactive kids, it is the best activity, in my opinion, but you better be in shape to follow them, or bring someone that's healthy that can follow them so they can just go and have a great time. And yes, they may have moments of discouragement, and it's okay. Why don't you just sit with them and just breathe while they're having their moment of discouragement and continue? So this is really cool. Is there anything else you would like to share about being in nature? Why dads and families ought to schedule in some time, at the very minimum once a month, but if you can do it every weekend, or that'd be even better.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there from what you just said to what we would talk about for dads and families. Really briefly, a lot of my experience too with taking kids out into the nature is when you look at foreign education systems like Denmark, they start their kids off in what they would call forestry schools. So as soon as they can go to school in Denmark, you can enroll them into this program where they pretty much go live in this forest ecosystem and spend time in like a capsule, and then they just kind of explore the natural world with the teachers and with the people that are there to support that. And so that's amazing. So I think the earlier you can get kids out into nature, the better. Also, if you think about our immune systems, if people aren't aware, the more we experience things by eating them, touching them when you're young, that's what builds your immune system. So when you're young, eat plenty of dirt that's, safe to eat. Obviously, like you got to be careful where you're eating at some places, but the more you can experience what nature is, regardless of how you're doing that when you're young, the better. And one really quick story from when I was working in Oregon as an outdoor educator, I had one student who he called himself a gamer kid, and he was there for a week. And by the end of the week, he's like, don't send me home. So it doesn't take very long, but up to a week of spending time in nature without any connection to technology, you're just constantly going on walks and learning tactilely and all of that. It really changes how people perceive the way that they feel. And then they can shift out of that, oh, I'm just a gamer. You're like, I'm all about technology, but nature is great too. So if you can find that blend, that's where it's really at. So hopefully that ties a little bit into how families and dads can experience nature, because that'll really impact the health and the well-being of your kids.
And if you're not a health nut, go to a camp or a place where you're there's these beautiful luxury cabins too in nature that you can use with guides, and so you don't have to worry about it. You can just show up and go. But if you're the type that likes to get into the dirt and do the camping, schedule it in. And if the whole family can't come, you take those that can. And yes, you will get resistance from those beautiful teens who like. However, you're the parent, and I highly suggest that you bring them out in nature, especially with what Byron just shared with us. Can you imagine the value that this leaves to your family? Like it's a legacy, really, of mental health, emotional health, learning the systems in nature. What are you observing? Bring this aspect, develop this curiosity in your child. And when you get home, you can write all these questions, and you can say, oh, over the next month we'll Google these answers and see if we can find things, see if we can find some answers, because there's some really, really amazing. And children will most likely blow you away with what they notice because they don't have as many preconceived ideas, right? So they'll be able to see and to notice what's wrong. So find a way to recharge your energy. If forestry bathing isn't for you, what is? Is it the snap, tap, and zap to calm down your amygdala, your survival mode? Or is it, there's many different ways. Figure out what works best for you because you are the one that's important and your family needs you as well. I don't want to put any pressure on anyone here. That's not my goal. My goal is to have you open up to ideas. If I triggered anything, let's just snap, tap, relax the shoulders, the spine, and exhale that out. Do you have a few last words for us, Byron?
I think you've said it pretty well. The key thing is just to find what works for you if you're trying to find a way to recharge in nature, and then figure out what's close to you to do that, whether it's a park, camping, going on a short hike, going on maybe just a walk, anything you can do to start traditions and then get them involved because they will get excited about nature. So it's always a great opportunity to take when you can.
Excellent. Well, I thank you so much. It was so exciting to have you. I have goosebumps. So this resonates with listeners, and that's how my body talks to me. So it was a pleasure to have you and to learn about what was that word? Biomimicry and forest bathing. Without knowing, I have been doing some forest bathing. And like you, I was raised in nature more. From the age of 7, we had a farm and then a dairy farm. And then at 17, when I left to go to college, well, my life changed quite a bit, right? And I am drawn. And actually, when I look above my laptop right now, what I see is the snow on the lake and the national park on the other side. I can continuously use sight to keep me calm, cool, and collected as well. But sometimes emotions get the better of me because I am human, like just anyone here is. And I love that you talked about the systems, to notice the systems and how people are opening up to the idea of how can we change designs to improve and waste less, of course, with the rugs. I mean, how many people get rid of a rug because there's a worn out spot? If you can, where would you get anything like that? Where would you find that? I'm just had another question for you.
Just a moment. I'm going to.
Yeah.
So yeah, Racy Anderson was the CEO, and he's actually a part of a continuation of that celebration of nature, which is called the Racy Anderson Accelerator or the Ray of Hope Prize. And he ran a carpet company, and that carpet company is called, I'm going to try and find it really quick again.
Thank you, because I think some people might be interested or think of different ways of fixing their homes up, that they don't have to throw everything out, but they can make a difference.
The carpet company is called Interface. I was trying to remember their name, but it's called Interface. And so they developed that innovative technology of how you can replace your carpet, but not the whole carpet. And then the second evolution of it, which is even more exciting, is they looked at geckos and how their feet can attach to things using what's called van der Waals forces. So they're intramolecular forces. And they use that to create a dry adhesive technology that will adhere the tiles to the floor so you don't have to use glue anymore. So they've evolved their idea even more. So that's also really exciting that they didn't just stop in one place. They continue to say, what could we do better?
What can we do better? Hey, what a beautiful questions to ask your children. What can we do better? When things aren't working out in the family circle, what can we do better? What a beautiful way to end this episode. Thank you so much, Byron. It was a pleasure to have you on today. And I wish you an amazing day. And what can we do better? And right here, I have the ripple effect of love for dads and families. It's a 12-month program to create a happier, stronger family starting March 10th. And if you want to take advantage of the $200 discount, this is Canadian dollars. So you can check out how much that is for you. You can also just, let me remove this so that you can see the bottom. You can scan the QR code and book a call with me. And if you heard of this through here and there are no calls left because my schedule is filling up, you can email me at christine@christineberna.com and I will be happy to make some time for you to have a talk. So have a great day and take great care